The showdown in the South, Bush and McCain. On the eve of what could be a make-or-break primary, we go one-on-one tonight with Governor Bush. A big sell-off on Wall Street today. We'll tell you what's behind it. And thousands of travelers stranded as a big winter storm hits the Midwest.
This is the CBS Evening News. With Dan Rather reporting tonight from Charleston, South Carolina.
Good evening. Under a Carolina moon, George Bush and John McCain are in the last 24 hours of a bitter and desperate battle to stay alive in the race for the American presidency. The race is close going into tomorrow's Republican presidential primary. If you believe the polls, and a lot of people don't, several out today suggest an uptick for George W. Bush in this tick-tight contest. Bush today brushed off Republicans who doubt he can win in November as, quote, weak-kneed. Bush and Arizona Senator and war hero John McCain both understand the key is turnout. McCain is targeting military veterans, independents and swing voters, and some crossover Democrats. Bush is pushing for the party establishment, the self-described religious right and anti-abortion voters. Against this backdrop, I caught up with Governor Bush on the campaign trail a short while ago in Anderson, South Carolina. First of all, I've heard you repeatedly today say you're confident you're going to win. What makes you think you're going to win?
Well, you know, somebody like me, I get out in these huge crowds, and I can sense the intensity of my vote. People are coming. We're just here in Anderson, South Carolina, where there's a giant crowd. And people walking up to me and say, you know something, I can't wait to vote for you. And I'm taking my friends and neighbors with me.
Well, let's look ahead.
Okay.
You have immediately behind South Carolina, you have Michigan and Arizona.
Yes, sir.
Would you agree that whatever happens in South Carolina, that you almost have to have one of those two?
I don't know. It depends. Again, we just have to see what happens in South Carolina. I should do well in Michigan.
Do you or do you not subscribe to the idea that if John McCain loses here, he's finished?
You know, that's going to be up to John. It's hard for me to put words in his mouth, or I don't think it's fair for me to strategize for him.
You don't believe if you lose here that you've had it, that you?
No, not at all. Absolutely, I'm prepared. There was a big report out the other day about how we were, you know, misspending money. But what the report didn't say was that we have been pre-advancing money. We have been spending money in states that are about to occur.
Do you think you can close him out before California?
I hope so.
If God smiles and you get lucky, you think you could do that?
Possibly.
Do you think he could close you out before California?
Yeah, I would certainly hope not, but I guess anything is possible, but I don't believe so, because first of all, I think I'm going to win tomorrow, and we'll see how I do in Michigan. I've spent quite a bit of time in Michigan, believe it or not, even though I've been living here in South Carolina for the last 2 weeks, and you know, it's just hard to speculate. I'm confident, and I'm optimistic. And I readily concede the last time we were together, I predicted victory in New Hampshire, so as a prognosticator, you probably don't think I have much credibility. But I like my chances here.
For John McCain, a victory here in South Carolina would stop talk that he's peaked and can't beat Bush in the long run for the nomination. Phil Jones is tracking the McCain push for a big turnout and which groups he's targeting. Phil?
Well, Dan, night has arrived, and John McCain is here in Litchfield, South Carolina, right behind me, finishing up his 4th event of the day. He's spending these final hours trying to energize independents and Democrats and to make his campaign look like a winner. At the College of Charleston today, the maverick presidential warrior looked more like a rock star. But when he talked about what he's trying to do to the Republican Party and American politics, he was dead serious.
We are starting a revolution. We are starting to reform the Republican Party. I say to independents, Democrats, libertarians, vegetarians, come on over, vote for me tomorrow, and I'll give you your dream.
As you watch McCain, there's no sense that he's worried about the polls that show him trailing. And as I talked with McCain aboard his campaign bus this afternoon, there was total confidence about tomorrow.
I think we're going to have a big turnout, and I think we're going to win.
You now think you're going to win?
Oh, yeah, sure. I've always thought that.
The local headlines, one of them right here this morning says, absentee voting already heavy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Talking about historic proportions they're expecting.
Yep.
What's that mean? What's that mean?
We win. That means that people turn out who have never voted before or have not voted in many years.
So here's how the McCain team figures it. 4 years ago, 276,000 people voted in the primary. They say if 350,000 vote this time, they win. If it's substantially less than that, then they will lose to Bush and the Republican establishment. Dan?
Phil Jones, thanks. Now, here's the way the George W. Bush people figure it. As you heard, the governor likes his chances of winning here, but he's not leaving it to chance. CBS's Bill Whitaker has more about the Bush camp's heavy spending strategy to get out their vote tomorrow.
One reason George W. Bush has almost depleted his vast treasury is because he's going for broke here, pulling out all stops to win.
So the people of South Carolina are seeing me fight for the vote.
He's mounted a costly three-pronged assault on the state. First, the charm offensive, upbeat Bush on the stump, wooing the party faithful with a feel-good message of tax cuts and family values.
My job is to rally the armies of compassion all around America.
If the armies of compassion don't get you, bring in the heavy artillery.
Senator McCain?
Bush has plowed well over $3 million into a relentless barrage of radio and TV commercials trying to blow up John McCain's campaign, with anti-abortion surrogates firing from the sidelines.
So if you want a strong pro-life president, don't vote for John McCain.
If compassion and commercials don't turn you on to Bush, perhaps stealth mudslinging will turn you off to McCain. The Bush campaign and groups that back him have made hundreds of thousands of mailings and calls blasting McCain with language so tough it made one McCain supporter cry.
I believe in you.
Bush's response? McCain is blasting him with nasty flyers too.
There's nothing factual about this.
Bush launched this all-out assault because he can't afford to lose here. After New Hampshire, another failed primary could deal a fatal blow to his presidential hopes. Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Charleston, South Carolina.
All this week, CBS's Bob Schieffer's been giving us nightly insights on this big fight in South Carolina. Bob, you've been coast to the interior, top to bottom, all over the state. What do you see in here that impresses you?
The first thing, Dan, is the enthusiasm that this thing is generating. Jim Moore, who's the sheriff up at Lawrence County, up in the western end of the state, said it's almost like a local election. He's never seen anything like it. Mr. Bandy, who is the top political reporter in the state, says he's never seen anything like it. There's going to be a big turnout of voters. Both of these men know they've got to get their people to the polls. McCain is going to depend on veterans running phone banks to get people out. The Bush people are running a very sophisticated telephone and mail campaign. They're going to try to contact by mail or telephone 1 million voters over the next day and tomorrow.
That's a pretty expensive operation.
It's a very expensive, but it's so sophisticated. Older voters will get a recorded message from Strom Thurmond over the phone. Young women will get a recorded message from Laura Bush. Very sophisticated.
Bob Schieffer, thanks. On the CBS Market Watch, the government's first read on inflation this year shows inflation running just 2.2%, down a bit from last year. That news didn't stop a big sell-off on Wall Street today. The Dow plunged nearly 300 points. NASDAQ down 137. Reason to call in CBS News business correspondent Anthony Mason. Anthony, what's going on here?
Dan, it all goes back to Greenspan and his war on inflation. After the Fed chairman appeared to post a speed limit on the stock market yesterday, the Dow hit a speed bump today and slipped into reverse. Mr. Greenspan probably enjoyed today's near 300-point Dow plunge. The red-hot markets, he's argued, have inflated household wealth and kept the economy on overdrive. Today, Wall Street woke up to his warning.
He said yesterday, no uncertain terms, fellas, I'm going to clobber you. I'm going to raise rates until we slow this economy down. No ifs, ands, and buts. When he's that direct, you have to take the lead.
So stocks beat a retreat. The Dow is now down 13% from its record high a little over a month ago. Dan?
Anthony Mason in New York, thanks. Still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News from Charleston, South Carolina. Snow, sleet, wind, and rain from Nebraska to New England. And another stunning revelation about the spy search that focused on one man. On the CBS Weather Watch, the President's Day holiday weekend began with a howling storm. It spread up to 9 inches of snow from the Midwest to New England, plus rain and wind elsewhere. CBS's Randall Pinkston reports from Chicago.
Wind, water, snow, and sleet swept across America's heartland. The Midwest has seen worse storms, but this was the first major storm of the new millennium, and it was bad enough.
Is there another flight
flight you can get me on?
Especially if you were traveling by air. Northwest Airlines alone was forced to cancel more than 200 flights in the Midwest, an attempt to avoid what happened during a storm last year in Detroit when thousands of passengers were stuck for hours inside aircraft.
Every line is busy, to every airline.
Today at Chicago's O'Hare, Barbara Altblade beat the clock, trying to get to Phoenix.
Our daughter is having a baby, so I'm hoping very much to get there soon.
The same weather system that brought the snow to Chicago brought disaster to Arkansas, where thunderstorms and several tornadoes roared through communities southwest of Little Rock. But in sections of drought-plagued Nebraska and Iowa, the storm was welcomed. Farmers like Kim May were hoping their bone-dry fields would finally get some help, but it wasn't enough.
6 inches is about a ½ inch moisture, and I mean, it's helpful, but it's a pretty small part of what we're really needing, I guess.
We need about 8 or 9 of these little storms to move through over the next couple of months to get us back into a stable environment.
And without more heavy snow or rain, the drought will worsen, and that could spell economic disaster for farmers and higher food prices for consumers. Dan?
Randall Pinkston in Chicago. For months, CBS's Cheryl Atkinson has been digging into and reporting in depth on the case of Wen-Ho Lee. He's the former U.S. nuclear weapons laboratory scientist. He is the only person charged in the alleged spilling of nuclear weapons secrets to China. Tonight, in an exclusive report, correspondent Atkinson turns up some surprising new details.
When the Energy Department discovered that China had stolen some of America's most sensitive nuclear secrets, they focused their spy search on the nuclear weapons laboratory in Los Alamos. It was Robert Vroman's job to oversee spy investigations at the lab. Now he's making a disturbing claim that his superiors in the Energy Department had tunnel vision, narrowing in on only one scientist, Dr. Wen-Ho Lee, when there were others who could have also been the spy.
There are people who have been in this investigation from the beginning who believe that before they even started the investigation that they had decided it was Lee.
The investigators drew up a list of 70 suspects that included Lee. Then they narrowed the list to 12.
It appeared to me like it was a bogus list to give the appearance of doing a legitimate investigation. There's one person on there that doesn't have a clearance. There are other people on there who don't have access to nuclear weapons information. And the investigator told me, he said, well, look, I know it's Lee, and we just need some other names to make this thing look good.
Notre Trulock is the man credited with pushing the theory of Lee as the prime suspect. He headed the Energy Department's spy search.
I don't believe there was any preconceived notion about Lee. I have confidence in the investigation and the investigators that compiled that list.
But Vroman isn't the first person to question the government's investigation of Lee. Lee remained the FBI's prime suspect even after field agents had cleared him and sent a memo to headquarters saying he was not their man. Also, as CBS News reported 2 weeks ago, 3 Energy Department polygraphers gave Lee passing scores on a lie detector test. The FBI then reviewed the results and said Lee failed the test. The FBI and the Department of Energy say the inconsistencies don't mean Lee is innocent. And they say his upcoming trial on alleged computer and security violations will provide new insight into how he became their chief spy suspect. Cheryl Atkinson, CBS News, Washington.
Ahead on the CBS Evening News from South Carolina, it could be a historic election in Iran with a new generation campaigning for freedom. America will be watching tomorrow's primary vote here in South Carolina, but today the biggest election story in the world is a crucial vote in Iran. Millions of Iranians turned out to choose a new parliament that could challenge the anti-American Islamic radicals who have ruled the country for more than 20 years. CBS's Tom Fenton is covering the story on assignment in Tehran.
When the votes are finally counted, it seems likely this election will have changed the balance of power in Iran. The choice was between old-style religious leaders who have kept tight control over everything and new-style reformers who promise new freedoms and change.
I think more than 60% of seats in the parliament will be for the reformers.
Women and young people are behind the demands for change. At one last-minute reform rally, instead of death to America, the crowd chanted, "Dictatorship can't work forever." That is a real change. What they want now are fewer restrictions on their lives and a more open society. 3 years ago, Iran elected a moderate president, Ayatollah Khatami, but his powers are limited. Now his charismatic brother, Reza Khatami, is the leading reform candidate and promises real changes, including an end to the banning of candidates the hardline clergy dislike.
We think that this law will be changed by
free press, free elections.
I think so.
What else, sir? What else? What else?
Yes, for youth and women, we have some program that make better life for them.
A better life for youth and women can't come too soon for most. Women still ride in the back of the bus and still risk imprisonment if they refuse to cover up. Millions of young people are unemployed in a failing economy that has been run for 20 years by incompetent and corrupt clergymen. Even if the reformers win a big majority in Parliament, reforms won't be automatic. The hardline clergy still run things in this country. They control the army, the secret police, the Revolutionary Guards, and the courts. And they can throw out laws that they say are un-Islamic. The mullahs will not give up easily. Ayatollah Khamenei may be this country's supreme leader and final authority, but on this election day, it looks as if millions of voters have ignored his advice and opted for change. Tom Fenton, CBS News, Tehran.
Next on CBS, this could be the home care nurse of your future. Tonight's Eye on America is a hard news report about this. Every 7 seconds in this country, a baby boomer hits the half-century mark, 50 years old. In this, the 21st century, boomers will make up the largest segment of America's elderly population. And as advances in medicine help them to live longer, high technology is going to help them live better, as CBS's Thalia Ashuris reports.
You look great.
It's barely dawn in Fort Wayne, Indiana. But every seat in Tiny Tim's Diner is already taken. The most popular person here, hands down, Marcia Gievers, legally blind for 7 years, but today blessed by technology.
I'm looking at something on the menu called the Monte Cristo.
She can now see using a sophisticated device that combines powerful magnification and contrast.
That's fantastic. It's just like a TV set.
With a playful nod to this Star Trek character, it's called a Geordie.
I think what you're seeing is the first wave of technological innovation really focusing in on older adults.
Joseph Coughlin heads the new Age Lab at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where researchers are looking at the needs of the nation's fastest growing population.
Technology has already made us live longer. The challenge today is whether technology will make those extra years we have worth living.
And that means integrating technology into the daily lives of the aging. MIT's Tom Sheridan developed a home health monitoring station that can relay personal medical data to doctors or hospitals miles away.
It takes the load off the emergency room, it takes the load off of the individual patient in terms of anxiety. And of course the stress is the big killer all by itself.
And that's not all. At Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, they've created Flow.
Hello, it is time to take your medicine.
A robot nurse and companion that can conduct at-home checkups, relaying results through computer connections.
Now you need to eat dinner.
We're going to see a lifestyle of active aging.
And maintaining mobility is key. Automakers are now designing cars with older people in mind. Pedals in some Fords move with the press of a button, providing easier access.
It's too difficult.
Back in Indiana, Marcia Gievers knows better than anyone the downside to all this high technology. The price. The Geordie costs $3,500, much more than Marcia could ever afford.
Everybody thought at the same time. We said, we got to do something.
Friends at the diner and in town all chipped in, and now Marcia has her sight back.
Everybody cried in here. And if you didn't cry, I'd say you had a problem.
The fact that the technology exists is an important miracle. But just as important is the fact that all those people cared enough about an old blind woman to make this happen.
In Fort Wayne, Indiana, I'm Thalia Ashuris for Eye on America.
On the CBS Health Watch, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has put off for as much as 6 more months a decision on whether to approve the so-called French abortion pill, RU486. The FDA says it is not a safety issue. It wants more information from the manufacturer. Updating our top story, tomorrow's Republican presidential primary here in South Carolina turned out as the key. The Bush camp is renting anything that moves to get anyone who breathes to the polls. The McCain camp is trying to match them on that. We'll be here to bring you results and analysis on the Saturday CBS Evening News. Sunday morning on Face the Nation, Bob Schieffer's guest is Governor John Engler of Michigan, the next battleground state. George Bush will also be on. Now from 60 Minutes, here's Steve Croft.
Are there people who really think that anyone who performs an abortion deserves to die? A doctor who says she's been targeted thinks there's no doubt about it. No doubt either that Kevin Spacey is different from your usual matinee idol Academy Award nominee. Both those stories Sunday on 60 Minutes.
For the CBS Evening News, Dan Rather reporting tonight from Charleston, South Carolina. See you tomorrow. Good night.
For news 24 hours a day, CBS.com on the internet and on our interactive partner, America Online, at keyword CBS News.
This is CBS.